In 1875, a homesteader in West Texas named E.L. Whippo stood at the bottom of a hole he'd been digging for almost a year. He was 30 feet underground. Above him, the circle of daylight looked impossibly distant. Around him, solid rock enclosed the shaft on all sides. And that morning, after 12 months of work, after picking through 100 feet of stone so hard it sometimes took him an entire day to advance 3 inches, he was ready to quit. His wife told him no. She reminded him that twice a week she rode a wagon 9 miles to a spring to haul water back to their homestead. 18 miles round trip, 2 full days of work every week, just for water. So Whippo picked up his hammer and star drill and kept going. This is the story of the frontier well digger. Not the romanticized image of pioneers finding water with divining rods and prayers. This is the real story of men who descended into darkness with picks and shovels, digging holes sometimes over 200 feet deep, risking death by cave-in, suffocation, blasting accidents, and falls, all for the one thing no frontier family could survive without: water. Between 1850 and 1890, as settlers pushed westward onto the Great Plains and beyond, finding water became the difference between survival and abandonment. Surface water, streams and rivers, was quickly claimed. The best homesteads went first, taken by the earliest arrivals who staked claims along reliable water sources. Everyone who came after had to dig, and dig deep. On the frontier, a shallow well might go 20 feet before hitting water. A typical well went 40 to 60 feet. Deep wells went 80, 100, even 150 feet or more. Every foot of that depth was dug by hand. The process started with a man, a pick, and a shovel. The well had to be wide enough for him to swing his tools, usually 6 to 8 feet in diameter. He'd start digging, throwing dirt up and out of the hole as long as he could reach the surface. That lasted maybe 6 feet, maybe 8 if he was tall. After that, he needed help. A rope and bucket system. Someone at the top to haul up the dirt he filled at the bottom. Bucket after bucket, hundreds of buckets, thousands of buckets. As the shaft deepened, the work became more difficult. The air grew stale. The light faded to twilight, then to near darkness. The temperature dropped, or in some places rose as the earth's heat built up, and the dangers multiplied with every foot. Cave-ins were the terror every well digger lived with: loose soil, unstable sand, crumbling rock. Without warning, the walls could collapse, burying a man alive at the bottom of a shaft where no one could reach him in time. Some diggers lined the walls with timber or stone as they went, creating a curbing that held the earth back. But timber cost money. Stone took time. And both added to the labor. Every board lowered, every stone placed, meant more work in an already exhausting job. Then there was the problem of air, or more precisely, the lack of it. At depths beyond 30 or 40 feet, the air at the bottom of a well could become unbreathable. Carbon dioxide settled in the shaft. Methane seeped from underground pockets. The oxygen simply ran out. Well diggers called it bad air. If you breathed it, you'd grow dizzy, confused, weak. Then you'd collapse. Then you'd die. And unless someone reached you within minutes, there was nothing anyone could do. The solution was simple, but terrifying. Before descending into the deep well, a digger would lower a kerosene lantern on a rope. If the flame went out, the air was bad. If it stayed lit, you could probably breathe. Probably. It wasn't a guarantee. It was just better than guessing. Some diggers who worked alone would dig for an hour or two, then climb to the surface to haul out the dirt themselves. It was exhausting, inefficient work, but it was safer than staying down in the darkness for extended periods. Others worked in pairs, one man at the bottom digging, one at the top hauling. They'd trade positions throughout the day, giving each man time to breathe fresh air and rest from the physical labor. Large wells, dug for railroads or town water supplies, required crews. Sometimes 10, 15, even 20 men working in shifts. The work went faster, but it also meant more mouths to feed, more wages to pay, and more complexity in coordinating the labor. One railroad well dug in Nebraska took 15 men 90 days to complete. The shaft was 24 feet in diameter and 100 feet deep. They excavated approximately 48,000 cubic feet of earth, all of it hauled up in wooden barrels pulled by mules. When they finished, the well could produce about 90,000 gallons of water in 24 hours. The railroad lined it with quarried stone and installed a steam-powered pump. It cost a fortune in labor and materials, but without water, the railroad couldn't run trains. The investment was worth it. For homesteaders, the stakes were even higher. A family's survival depended on finding water. But unlike railroads, homesteaders couldn't afford to hire crews of 15 men for 90 days. They hired a traveling well digger. These specialists moved from homestead to homestead, offering their services for cash or trade. A well digger might work alone or with a single helper. He'd arrive with his tools, picks, shovels, ropes, buckets, sometimes blasting equipment, and start digging. The work was priced by the foot. The deeper the well needed to go, the more it cost. Payment might be cash if the family had it. More often, it was goods, livestock, grain, labor on the digger's own land. Some families promised payment after harvest, gambling that their crops would be successful enough to cover the debt. Hitting rock changed everything. Soft soil and clay could be dug with pick and shovel. Sand and gravel required careful curbing to prevent cave-ins. But solid rock, that required blasting. The process was dangerous and slow. At the bottom of the well, the digger would use a star drill, a long steel rod with a star-shaped cutting edge, and a heavy hammer. He'd pound the drill into the rock, rotating it slightly after each strike, slowly creating a hole perhaps 2 inches in diameter and 12 to 18 inches deep. This might take hours, sometimes a full day for a single drill hole. Once the hole was deep enough, he'd pack it with black powder. Before 1831, when safety fuses were developed, well diggers used burning black powder as both fuse and explosive. They'd light it and then have to climb out of the well as quickly as possible, scrambling up a rope or ladder while sparks rained down and the fuse burned toward the charge. Sparks frequently jumped ahead and triggered the blast early. One well digger named John Robert Shaw reportedly blew himself up at least 4 times while blasting wells into rock. Somehow, he survived all 4 explosions. Most men who made that kind of mistake didn't get a second chance, let alone a 5th. Even with proper safety fuses, blasting was dangerous. The confined space of a well shaft concentrated the explosion's force. Flying rock could kill a man instantly. The concussion could rupture eardrums or worse, and the smoke and fumes that filled the shaft after a blast made the air unbreathable for hours. But it was the only way through solid rock. Consider E.L. Whippo's ordeal in West Texas. He started his well and made good progress through the first 30 feet. Then he hit rock. Solid, unforgiving stone that his pick barely scratched. For nearly a year, 12 months, he attacked that rock with star drill and hammer. Most days he advanced less than 3 inches. Some days he advanced nothing at all. The rock defeated him again and again. His wife hauled water 18 miles round trip twice a week while he worked at the bottom of that shaft. Finally, after digging through 100 feet of rock, he broke into sand and gravel. Hope surged until he hit more rock just 8 feet below. But this rock was different, honeycombed, porous. When he punched through with a crowbar, cold water rushed up and rose to his armpits. After a year of brutal labor, after nearly giving up multiple times, E.L. Whippo had his well. His wife would never have to make that 18-mile trip again. That well was 252 feet deep, every foot dug by one man with hand tools. Another legendary well digger worked in Nebraska during the 1880s and 1890s. His name was Joseph Grewe, though everyone called him Dutch Joe or the Human Badger. Over his career, Dutch Joe reportedly dug more than 6,000 feet of wells. That's over a mile of shaft dug vertically into the earth, one shovelful at a time. He was killed in 1894 while cleaning a well 225 feet deep. A bucket of sand and gravel that had been tied at the top of the well came unfastened and fell. It struck him in the head at the bottom of the shaft. There was nothing anyone could do. At that depth, by the time anyone could reach him, he was already dead. His death illustrated another hazard of well digging. The danger never ended when the digging finished. Wells required maintenance. They filled with sediment. The walls deteriorated. Objects fell from the surface. In 1895, a man named F.W. Carlin fell into a well in Custer County, Nebraska. The well was 143 feet deep. Carlin survived the fall, barely. He was injured but conscious, and he was trapped at the bottom with no way out. Using his pocket knife, he cut footholds into the wooden lining of the well shaft. Slowly, painfully, he climbed. It took him 2 days and 2 nights to crawl his way to the surface. 2 days alone in darkness, injured, climbing inch by inch, knowing that if he fell again, no one would ever get him out. The economics of well digging were brutal. In 1896, wage data shows well diggers earned somewhere in the range of manual laborers, probably $1 to $2 per day when working. But well digging wasn't steady employment. You worked when someone needed a well. When the job was done, you moved on to the next one. No work meant no pay. For the homesteader hiring a digger, the cost could be devastating. Drilling a well might cost $100 or more, a fortune for a family barely scraping by. Some families went into debt they'd spend years repaying. Others tried to dig their own wells to save money, risking their own lives in the process. And there was always the chance that after spending all that money, after weeks or months of work, the well would be dry, or the water would be alkaline and undrinkable, or the flow would be too weak to support a family and livestock. That's where dowsers came in, the water witches who claimed they could locate underground water using a forked stick or divining rod. The practice had ancient roots. Versions of dowsing existed in Greek, Roman, and Persian traditions. By the 1800s, it was common across rural America. A dowser would walk across the land holding a Y-shaped branch, traditionally hazel or willow, with the 2 forked ends in his hands and the stem pointing forward. When he passed over underground water, the rod was supposed to dip or twist, marking the spot. Some dowsers worked on a neighborly basis, helping people in their community for free or for small favors. Others charged regular fees and made a business of it. Did it work? The scientific evidence says no. Studies consistently show that dowsers perform no better than random chance. In areas with adequate rainfall and favorable geology, underground water is so prevalent near the surface that it's almost impossible to drill and not find water. Successful dowsers appeared successful because water was almost everywhere. But on the frontier, where families were desperate and drilling was expensive, many homesteaders consulted a dowser before starting a well. It provided reassurance, even if the reassurance was based on superstition rather than science. The digger took his chances either way. Dowsed location or not, he still had to go down into the earth with his tools and start excavating. The work consumed entire lives. Some men spent decades digging wells, moving from homestead to homestead, town to town, following the westward expansion of settlement. They developed reputations based on their skill, their speed, their willingness to tackle difficult jobs in rock or unstable soil. The physical toll was enormous. Well diggers developed distinctive muscular builds from the constant overhead swinging of picks and hammers. Their hands became calloused leather from gripping tool handles. Their shoulders and backs bore the strain of thousands of repetitive strikes against unyielding earth and stone. Many suffered from respiratory problems, lungs damaged by dust, rock particles, and the poor air at the bottom of deep shafts. Some went deaf from the constant percussion of hammer strikes in confined spaces. Others developed joint problems that crippled them in middle age. The work offered no protection, no safety regulations, no insurance if you were injured or killed. You worked until your body gave out or until an accident ended your career permanently. There was no retirement plan for a well digger. You kept working until you couldn't anymore. These were not educated men. They were not wealthy men. They were laborers who had mastered a dangerous trade through hard experience and survival. Many had no formal training. They'd learned by doing, by digging wells, by watching other diggers, by making mistakes and living through them, or not living through them, because well digging killed men regularly. Cave-ins buried diggers alive. Blasting accidents blew them apart. Bad air suffocated them. Falls crushed them. Falling objects from the surface struck them. The work attracted desperate men willing to risk their lives for daily wages, and some of those men paid the ultimate price. Yet without them, the frontier could not have been settled, not in the vast stretches of prairie and plains where surface water was scarce or absent, not in the regions where rainfall was sparse and unreliable. Every farm, every ranch, every small town needed water, and water meant wells, and wells meant someone had to dig them. By the 1890s, technology began to change the trade. Mechanical well drilling rigs appeared, powered by steam or horse-drawn mechanisms. These could bore holes much faster than hand digging and could reach greater depths with less labor. But even mechanical drilling required skilled operators. And in remote areas, hand-dug wells continued to be built well into the 20th century, simply because hauling a drilling rig to an isolated homestead wasn't practical or affordable. The legacy of the frontier well digger lives on in thousands of abandoned wells scattered across the American West. Many are now safety hazards, open shafts that can kill the unwary. Others have been sealed or converted to modern use, but each one represents the same thing. A man descended into darkness with hand tools and courage, digging through soil and sand and rock, risking his life to bring water to the surface. Consider what that actually meant. Imagine standing at the bottom of a shaft, 80 feet deep. The walls press close around you. The air is stale and thin. A tiny circle of daylight glows far above, so distant it provides almost no illumination. You work by the light of a candle or lantern, hoping it stays lit, because if the flame goes out, it means the air has gone bad and you need to get out immediately. Every swing of your pick echoes in the confined space. Every shovelful of dirt goes into a bucket that someone hauls up on a rope. You work for hours in that darkness, your world reduced to the few feet of earth around you and the task at hand. You know that the walls could collapse at any moment. You know that you're breathing air that might be slowly poisoning you. You know that if something goes wrong, if the rope breaks, if a rock falls, if the walls give way, there's a good chance no one will reach you in time. And you do it anyway. Because families need water. Because settlements need to grow. Because someone has to do the work that makes everything else possible. The frontier well digger was never famous. He was never celebrated in dime novels or Wild West shows. No poets wrote about him the way Longfellow wrote about the blacksmith. No legends grew around his name the way they did around cowboys and gunfighters. He was just a man with a shovel, digging holes in the ground. Except those holes kept people alive. Those holes made farms productive. Those holes turned empty prairie into communities. E.L. Whippo spent a year digging through 100 feet of solid rock because his wife needed water. Dutch Joe dug over a mile of well shafts during his career before a falling bucket killed him. John Robert Shaw survived being blown up 4 times while blasting through rock. 15 men worked 90 days to dig a railroad well that would water steam engines crossing Nebraska. Traveling well diggers moved from homestead to homestead, descending into shaft after shaft, never knowing if this would be the well where the walls collapsed or the air went bad. They did it for $1 or $2 a day. They did it in trade for grain or livestock. They did it because it was the work they knew and the work that was needed. The frontier well digger worked in isolation, in darkness, in danger. He was the man who brought water from the depths of the earth to the surface of the frontier. He was the man who made settlement possible in places where rain was scarce and rivers were distant. He was essential. He was unsung. He was the man at the bottom of the hole with a shovel in his hands and 80 feet of empty space above his head. And without him, the American West as we know it would not exist. Every time you turn on a faucet, remember, someone, somewhere, once dug down through the earth to reach the water that makes your life possible. On the frontier, that someone was often a lone well digger, working in darkness, risking everything for the one resource no one can survive without. That was the frontier well digger. Down in the darkness, swinging his pick, filling his bucket, advancing inches at a time through solid rock if necessary, making the West possible, one shovelful at a time.